Hi and welcome to Dynamics Update. Today it's just me and Gustav. Hello, Gustav.
Hello, Johan.
Hello. And today we are thinking about going through the release notes for the 2024 Wave release that was released a couple of days ago.
Yeah, the first wave release this year, and out of two, right? so,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
so we
And
thought basically, I mean, looking at the new release cadence that we have, and looking at all the material that's coming, we wanted to do like a preview episode, perhaps you could call it, looking at what is coming, and we will look into those specific features as they are released as well, of course. But otherwise, if Johan and I don't find more things to do, we will be out of a job because we only have 4 releases per year now. So this is one of them.
exactly. And I think one important thing that you raise here is that what we see in the Wave release notes is not exactly release notes. It's more of a roadmap going forward. So if you look through the release notes, you will see that most of the features that is coming in February, March, April, or even further ahead. And on a lot of them, it even says that this is things that we have planned, and they might not even be released if we change our mind. So there is,
Yeah.
in some cases, there are actually disclaimers that say that even though this is something that is in the release wave, it might end up in a situation where we need to postpone it even longer, or we need to maybe we even deprecate it before it's even released. It has happened before that things go into preview and then they are deprecated. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's a lot to digest here, and we don't want to stretch this out. We will absolutely miss features here in this like summary that we, Johan and I, both come from a technical area, so we'll try to find something from each area. But be sure to read up on the release plan. There is a nice little PDF document if you want to read it from page 1 to page 670. You can do that, of course. I won't stop you, but you can also, I think there's on YouTube summaries, and of course it's on Learn as well. So you should find whatever you are looking for in your specific area, I think.
didn't they used to be like 350 pages?
I haven't actually kept the record, but
No, but I think it was something like that. I mean, 670. It's like, wow,
yeah, it's a lot.
it's a lot.
I maybe they used Copilot to summarize and Learn and put it out into a PDF
You
document.
should probably use Copilot to summarize the release notes.
I want one thing I can do is to like Control F in a document and see how many times it finds Copilot.
That's a lot of things times, I guess.
380 times it's mentioned.
Okay. So there is a
Every
certain
other page.
there is a certain focus on Copilot then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't dare to type in AI to see how much that is mentioned. Yeah, we are up to 1,000. Yeah, okay, so let's just get started.
If you're intolerant to Copilot, you shouldn't probably shouldn't read it in that case.
No, then I probably should switch careers, I think. But no, I'm not intolerant to Copilot. I
No.
love Copilot. It's
Yeah.
just
No.
it's good. It's everywhere.
Yes. So let's start at the finance side. And I know the first one is actually a couple of your favorite features. It has to do with business performance.
Yeah, exactly. The business performance planning tool. There are so many abbreviations. We have the business performance analytics, the BPA, and we have the business performance planner tool. I actually tried installing that recently, but it's tied to a premium license, so you need to be mindful of that, of course. But it looks very promising. It's basically what it is. It's a business planning tool. You have a lot of data models in there to drive operational visibility and create reports, etc. So I haven't really been able to try out the tool yet. Unfortunately, I hope to do that when it's available to us internally, at least. But there's a lot. It's clear looking at the release plan. There's a lot of investment into that area. But just be aware that at least right now, it's tied to having a premium finance license.
And one thing to mention here is that the premium finance license isn't really defined in a very specific manner. So I'm also guessing that some of the AI and Copilot related things will probably also end up in the premium license, if I were to guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and that seems clear. So it will hopefully be more clarified moving on. But apart from that, I think there's a lot of nice little features. Speaking of Copilot, I tried to leverage the collections Copilot, because that was really like a clear use case. You could use Copilot to summarize details about a specific collection. To like we were missing payment on this specific invoice, which was sent to you at this date. It kind of does some of the heavy lifting there by generating natural language text for emails and sending it out. So there's an updated coordinated workspace coming with a new overview page as well. So really cool to see how that works, and with a timeline summary basically. So that seems to be very demo friendly, at least on how to actually use Copilot in a real way, not just summarizing text.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed as well is that if you look in the planning functionality, there is actually another feature that is powered by Copilot, and that is a cube and dimension creation, or dimension and cube creation. And I think that's a very interesting way, because when you look at like the large language models and the Copilots and the GPTs that we're working with today, they are very good at generating text, but they're also fairly good at understanding text. So you can actually take a big chunk of text and say, could you please summarize this for me? And it understands what it reads and summarizes it. But in this case, you can actually use it as an interface. You can tell it what kind of cube that you need. And I think that's very, very important, because before you might have had to have like a data science person building your cubes for you and finding out the dimensions and figuring out all of the ins and outs of how to build a cube in an optimal way. But being able to tell a Copilot means that you don't have to involve another person in it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think there's another feature as well on that topic. We've discussed the financial tags previously here on this podcast, like a easier data model wise, an easier way for financial dimensions. Basically, tagging, I think up to 20, if I remember correctly, on any supported financial transactions, and for each release, they seem to be adding more support for each and every one. The new thing that's coming here is like a defaulting engine. You can set up rules to assign automatically these financial tags to your transaction based on the rules that there is a real actual rule builder, but you can use Copilot with natural language, like type in, I want to apply this tag to all sales transactions coming from this particular customer group, or something like that. You can write it in natural language and it will convert it into a rule for you. And I think that's the best use case I've seen on how to really leverage Copilot, because you don't need to learn complex, in some ways, logic or code to get what you want. You can write it. So in the end, that means you and I will be out of a job sometime soon. But I think that's nice. That's a feature coming, a clear engine for assigning financial tags.
Yes. So the next one I would like to bring up it's one that we have talked about before, but then it actually went on vacation for a while. So it's the archiving feature. So it was in public preview, and then it was removed from public preview, and now it's back in public preview as of February 2024, and it's scheduled to be released in July 2024. So in this case, we start with like being able to archive general ledger posted data. So that means that data that has actually been posted to a journal, then we can actually start to remove things that aren't in use anymore, that has already been posted and booked. So
yeah, that's really cool, and it's clear as well. If you scroll down to the list of what's new and planned for each area, it's clear that in every segment, archiving is coming. We have the archiving of tax transactions, archiving from commerce side, archiving in supply chain. So it makes a lot of sense, of course, because now a lot of customers have been on the platform for quite a while. So storage, I believe, is not only a problem for whoever pays the fee, it's also a problem for engineering and infrastructure as well. So
and
so it makes
performance nonetheless.
sense. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Performance as well. I found one hidden, or it's not hidden, but it's lower down in the list of Globalization Studio, which maybe you skip that segment because it's a lot of specific globalization. But the one thing that's happening is the merging of the Regulatory Configuration Service, the RCS, not to be confused with LCS. It's probably built on the same framework. It looks very identical, but RCS is where if you worked with electronic reporting, like let's say for e-invoicing purposes or VAT reports or anything like that, you could access these the configurations and the models and the formats in LCS or RCS. But RCS is now being deprecated. It's being moved to Dataverse. So they will shut it down. This is an important date by August 1st, 2024. So that's pretty soon. And the ALM part of the ER basically will be done via Dataverse solutions. So there will be a new repository. So I think from anyone just working within F&O with ER models, what you will see is that there will be a change in the repository that you use. Basically, it will be moved to Dataverse storage instead, and the e-invoicing service design will use it will align with the RCS merge timeline. So that's a big change. If you do a lot of shared formats and you use RCS, it's important to. And if so, you're probably aware of this. But I just found it. I didn't really. It wasn't a specific topic, so it's important to highlight. I think the deprecation of RCS.
And I had finally started to learn to understand how RCS worked.
Yeah, so you can just scrap that now.
Okay, so I need to learn Globalization Studio, but that's also
no, you don't really. That's the point. The Globalization Studio you can use, of course, if you want to, but that's a different purpose. That's more for globalization purposes, for like localizing specific translations, labels, etc. Whereas the ER repository is more for where you stored your models, basically. So that will transition into Dataverse. So hopefully you don't have to learn the Globalization Studio.
Okay. Yes. So let's continue with what's next.
Well, in the list, we can go to supply chain. I mean, there is a lot to be covered in finance, of course, but we will cover those features as they are released as well. So these were the ones that came top of mind, just browsing through the list. So I would say supply chain would be the next area. And again, Copilot, of course, top of the list. Demand planning with Copilot, purchasing decisions with Copilot help. So there's a lot coming there to make decision making easier, but it's all based on the data that you have in F&O, of course. So depends on how you're using it.
Yep, and then we also get the updates to the product information management, the PIM component.
Yeah, exactly. I think that if you want to discuss it, just skip by it basically because it didn't look very interesting. Like the headline was to like a function to prevent export of products based on export restrictions. So, world is changing, markets are changing. At any given time, a specific set of wares cannot be sold to a specific country, for instance. So it's regulatory demands. And you can do this now by just stopping the item. There are country-based sales restrictions that you can use. This feature, if I understand correctly, is pretty much similar to the tax microservice that's running in Dataverse, where you leverage a specific set of rules that you configure in Dataverse. So the application will use that and handle stopping products basically from being sold or purchased based on your rules, but you manage the rules outside of F&O. So you don't have to remove the strictness of F&O, I would imagine. So it seems viable. I haven't really encountered this in my own day-to-day implementations, but I would imagine anything that if you have to do a release to like implement prevention of some products or go in and do changes in your ERP, maybe you can handle that rule set outside instead. The headline is the manage compliance with export control restrictions, and it's in public preview and end of July, according to the release plan as it is right now. sorry, in July in 2023. So it is in public preview, and it's GA in April. That's the plan. But one thing you mentioned before, Johan, was the warehouse management only mode as well.
What's that?
That is the well, basically the warehouse management only mode is already available that you can try out, but it's a switch that you flip in a legal entity or in an instance. It depends on your setup, where you magically transform Dynamics 365 F&O from an ERP to a WMS system. It's basically the same as Commerce Essentials, Retail Essentials was, where you could only use and leverage the specific components for commerce in that part, but in this case, using the advanced warehouse functionality. So if you don't need the ERP stuff, or you have another ERP, God forbid, but then you can still leverage the capabilities of Dynamics WMS. But I think the nice part and what's coming in the release wave is basically enhancements to this functionality. So it's being improved. And we will probably see more granular features here coming for each release. But one thing I liked about this is the capabilities that it adds around integration. So it has business events for subscribing to on-hand changes. It has messages for your normal warehouse operations with inbound and outbound messages. So it kind of does a lot of this stuff that we see being custom built for WMS integrations. So I'm going to try to invest some time into that. Maybe do a separate podcast or a session on that later on. But I think it's really, really cool. So the warehouse management only mode, you will probably see a lot of improvements to in release wave 1 and maybe 2 as well.
Yep. I would like to bring up the next area, and that's the cross-platform parts, of course, which is near and dear to my heart. And there are two ones there. There is, first of all, there is a new, more slipstream way of working with virtual entities. So exposing F&O data in Dataverse will be easier to work with going forward. And the second one is one that we have actually talked about in the previous episode, I think, and that's the asynchronous operations for dual write functionality. So being able to make some entities asynchronous instead of synchronous within dual write is a good thing, and yeah. we do that because we want to speed up the interface, because in some cases when you register a sales order, for instance, that will take a long time because it needs to commit everything to Dataverse and to sales before we can actually get control back in the system for F&O. So in that case, it's for performance reasons.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've seen that as well. Like we have to wait, or God forbid you run into problems because data is not synced in lower tier environments, perhaps. So yeah, that makes total sense to use is asynchronous in many cases. I love the term or the headline as well: hassle-free use of finance and operations data on Dataverse. That's very it's a gutsy description. Hassle-free.
It's fairly, saying something is hassle-free. It's like 100% commit.
Yeah, exactly. That's really.
Yeah. It can't even be a little hassle. Exactly. No, none whatsoever. So what it actually says in the release notes is that virtual table users accessing finance and operations data will experience better performance, automation, and less management, making it an alternative solution for accessing finance and operations data on Power Platform with less effort.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I mean, if that is hassle-free, I was more expecting near hassle-free, like near real-time. That would maybe be near hassle-free experience. But all joking aside, that's really that's a very cool functionality that really opens up the whole cross-platform usage. Not only if let's say you don't have CE, you have maybe Power Apps, just allowing a direct usage of the virtual entities in a hassle-free way. It opens up a whole ton of possibilities.
Yeah, and there is also, of course, also a push for migrating to Synapse Link instead of using export to data lake, because as we have mentioned before, that has been deprecated going forward.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, there's a ton. I wanted to jump into commerce. If you don't have anything specific you wanted to bring up on, you had one on human resources, I think.
Yes, actually. So I think we haven't talked about human resources like ever on this podcast. But the reason why I want to bring this up is actually because it has to do with the technical side. So what we get right now is the possibility to integrate human resource with Entra ID. So our employee database will actually be used as our employee database in the form of Entra ID will be used as a base for information for human resource, and we will also be able to enable and disable accounts in Entra ID, as I understand it, from the human resource module, which is cool.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah, you can really streamline the offboarding experience, at least where you want to disable accounts, maybe, and enable them. Of course, I'm not sure how it will work, but it makes sense because it's really tied into your Entra ID using the 365 Microsoft applications.
Yep.
Cool. So on commerce side, there's a lot happening as well, of course, in the different areas. I mean, just looking at the digital commerce side, the e-commerce storefronts, it's more like adding functionality. You enable to one, for instance, is the ability to request order delivery dates and add notes to be used. Maybe if you want to order something ahead of time and not just as you want right now. Some additional features, some promotions coming on the site. So I think those we should really revisit those storefronts, the built-in ones that you can use. They have a lot of functionality that you would expect, and you can solve many B2B scenarios as well as B2C, of course. So there's a lot coming in IOM as well, purchase order orchestration. And with my favorite tool, Store Commerce, there's a lot of nice little features, like much revolving around mobile devices. I'm guessing I didn't visit the National Retail Fair. I would love to go some year, but I'm guessing that's all the rage with mobile devices. But it's like, for instance, you can leverage the built-in camera to scan barcodes and QR codes. You would previously have to use a specific barcode reader, but now you can use the same. That's just available in Power Apps. Basically, you can use that functionality to use your camera, turning your mobile phone into a store commerce device with hassle-free, I was going to say, but less hassle perhaps. And there's Adyen Tap to Pay you can use in mobile devices as well. So a lot around like making the store commerce experience or usage easier, and maybe enabling the mobility in your stores to drive digital commerce. A lot of stuff coming there.
Yeah, I really like the including of the payment terminal within the POS terminal, so that you didn't have to have a separate card terminal on the side. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. It opens up a lot of scenarios for pop-up stores or whatever you need to do, and it makes rollout hopefully easier.
And I know for a fact in some cases that there have been issues with the communication between the hand terminal and the payment terminal. So having them in one is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And payment scenarios are never hassle-free, unfortunately. That's just asking for trouble. But and again, of course, in commerce, there's mention of historical data. Interestingly enough, it's not archiving; it's moving historical data to non-indexed tables for reduced costs. That to me sounds like archiving. I'm not sure why it's described differently, but again, that makes real sense because I mean, commerce. We already have a couple of storage saving capabilities like compressing tokens and so forth, but commerce payment transactions can really drive storage costs if you are not careful.
Yeah, I think it will actually use the same framework as the other archiving features. So moving it first to non-indexed tables and then eventually moving it out to a data lake, I think is the is the end goal.
Okay. Yeah. It makes sense. Like, just set up the rules of how you can archive it. And I don't dare to go into the legal aspects here, but if you store, as long as you store it somewhere, you should be safe.
Yep. And I mean that, of course, you need to look into that with the legal department, but I think, I mean, minimizing current data is a good thing, both for maintenance, for performance, for storage costs, and also for governance when it comes to not having to save like personal identifiable information and so on is a good thing, because eventually something will happen, something will leak somewhere, and then you have issues. So
yeah, good legal disclaimer there, Johan. Thank you. So Gustav said you could store it anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
You never want to hear that.
No, not from Gustav. No, that's good.
Not from me. No. Exactly.
Don't take legal advice from a podcast. That's
from this man. That's also a good tip in life. Never take legal advice from a podcast, unless it's a legal podcast.
And maybe not even then.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I actually did read one thing outside of the F&O release plan, Dynamics 365 release plan. I read the Power Platform release plan as well, just to see, because it's so much convergence going on right now, So I read up and I found one. I'm not going to go. There's a lot of interesting stuff there as well. So I suggest to read up on it, and we will most likely come back to some of it as well. But one thing I noticed, this is a very technical thing, but that's coming in public preview in March and GA in May, according to release plans. You are able to make direct calls to SQL, SQL Server stored procedures from Power Apps. Previously, you had the performance hit of running it through a Power Automate, so it's not like very snappy solution. You have to wait. You can do it, but it's not very user experience friendly, perhaps. But now that really opens up a lot of power to Power Apps doing complex stuff. And I know there's a lot of complex and really, really thorough Power Apps out there as well. But you can actually call, using Power FX, you can call directly a stored procedure using an Azure SQL connector. So you add a server database object and then you access them. We joke about like Power Apps is the new Excel when it comes to complexity, and this really is will open up a lot of powerful options for Power Apps. And again, maybe we need to change jobs.
Might be that we do.
Going in and fixing SQL. I actually do know TSQL, so maybe I can go into fixing those broken stored procedures.
Yes, and one thing I would like to raise as well is something that is called in the release notes, that is called enterprise data activation, which I think is really cool, because I mean the whole point of Fabric and One Lake and whatever is that we collect data in one place from multiple different sources, and having being able to use natural language to query tables and compare things and join things together, I think is a really, really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Really cool. But I think that we need to do another podcast for just the Power Platform enhancements as well, and maybe bring in a colleague to discuss the CE stuff.
Yep. So I think we are actually at the end of today's pod. But we will return in a couple of weeks with a new podcast, and we have a couple of really, really great interviews coming up. So stay tuned for those. And by that,
thank you,
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.